Hello YouTube world, we're doing a neat video today. So you can see on the bench there's a 661, that's just there for scale. Doing an unboxing video. Oop. Of the holes form a working man. Can you see the G and the 8? Obviously I've already unboxed it. So I kind of cheated. But I wanted to go through, I've not really done anything other than open it up and take a look at it. So what I want to do is we'll open it up and I'll actually do some sort of first steps when you get your pre-built clone, things that I look for, maybe you find helpful. So we'll get it out of the box here. In it you do get a mixing bottle. I just learned how to mix. You get a manual. You should read this. This is a clone. This is a Xerox copy of Steele's manual. It's wonderful. It tells you all kinds of specifications. Tells you how to start your saw. Tells you where all the buttons and levers are. It even gives you, let me flip over here to it, a good maintenance schedule. What kind of mixes to run. Yeah, here it is. Do you see it? You see it? That's how you know. It's a Xeroxed copy. These are super useful. It talks about cutting and falling and how to safely operate and use the saw. It has pictures and read one of these. I highly commend you to do that. Nobody reads these enough, and it's a real shame. I didn't mean to throw that on the ground. Anyway, you get a manual, you get a mixing bottle. I don't ever use a mixing bottle. I just mix my own stuff. You get a little toolkit. They're making these out of these nice sort of fabric-y whatevers. Get you some dogs, various hardware, including bar nuts, and a little tuning screwdriver, a cheapo, I mean, one of these. If you don't have a T27 T-handle, I mean, they're cheap. Get one, but I guess this will work. They're good to throw in your toolkit to hang on to, and a scrunch. Because everybody loves scrunches. Do notice this one's big on both ends. A 19 and looks like a 17. But you get those with your g888. You obviously get a superfluous amount of packing material, as you can tell by what's spilling over the top here. You get a clutch cover. This was wrapped up in bubble wrap. I just want to show you how large this thing is. I'm 6'1" or so. I got hands. This thing is huge. Now, the reason the 661 is here, I feel like everybody has a good frame of reference. These are about the same size as a 660. Do you see? Do you see it? My goodness. Obviously, you get a clutch cover with it. You get a bag that the saw is in. What else is in here? Oh, this is actually neat. I like this. It comes with a spare clone Elastistarts, which I actually don't like those Elastistarts, but it's neat that they give you a spare one, a second spare rope, and a big old D handle. I don't know if they just got a bunch of complaints on those breaking, but it's neat. Value for your dollar, as they say. Steel charge another 30 bucks for that. Let's see. More of this packing material. Yeah, Double box, by the way. It's getting to you safely. Okay, Moses. And the thing itself, it looks so small on the camera. Where's my tape measure? Hold on, I'm going to get a tape measure. Stay right there. Found it. So just because my gaster has been flabbered, okay? Let's go just right about there. That's 21 inches long. From about here to the front of the case to about here, back of the handle. We'll call it 20. All right? To the top of the plastic is 10 inches. All right, that's not that big. I think that's about the same as the 661. And by George, I'd be right. The top of the hump there. But, okay, so can I get you down here? Hold on. Whoop. See, you can see they're about the same height. But the length, okay, so they're about the same spot back there. Look how much longer this thing is. Like, it's obvious where they're getting that extra size. It's in the length of it. Moses, that thing's big. Okay. Now that we're done talking about how big it is, that's what she said. Let's get on to more important things. Okay? Well, the other thing I'll point out, width. All right, this is big. It's quite a bit bigger. This doesn't need to be here anymore. Actually, I should be diagnosing it for a bad crank noise. We'll keep making videos. I've not done anything other than push a button and take the air filter off, and that's all I have done so far, to be truthful. So what I typically do, sometimes, honestly, with these, because I know I can go through and fix whatever, I put fluids in them and run them. Is that the right thing to do? Not always. But that's the risk I'm willing to take. I can also sort of tell from having worked on a bunch of these if a bolt's kind of loose or something of that nature. But we're going to do a teardown. I'm going to show you some things we look for. Obviously, decompression valve works. The steel clones, they've gotten better. I remember in the past they were horrendous about this master switch, especially the high idle. Right? And that's something I do want to point out, because I can't tell you how many customers I've had that don't know what high idle is. Right? Most all saws anymore, if you go all the way down, that's choke. Right? Now, if you come back up one click, that's high idle. So the choke is off, but the idle, the throttle blade is still canted up a little bit to allow more air through. Right? A lot of guys I see, they go choke, they pull, it hits, and then they go back to the idle position. It's making it harder on themselves. Again, read your manual. It's in there. So, that actually seems to be in really good order. It's got good action to it. I do very much like, this has a big, soft foam grip. I'm sure in a falling or a tree service environment, that's not going to last. But for a mill, it should be okay. And that's what this one is destined for, at least initially. That is so nice. It's not, again, like this is like a harder rubberized plastic, which is really great for what it is and what it's for. But this just feels like they're trying to make it nicer. And as somebody who likes nice things and buys cheap things, I like this. That's nice. It even does tell you here, it's got some various logos and thingamajigs on it. Big old air filter cover. This is one thing I have noticed that I've not seen on other saws, other clones. They're coming with a little O-ring to help seal up that gap. Nice touch. This does seem like the same, I believe it is the same HD2 style filter that you find on the 660, 661s, 460s, all that stuff. Anyway. So oftentimes I'll get to about here, I take a look at things. I do want to point out that carb venturi is quite large. It should be 0.800. So the next thing I often do, get to there, really what I want to do is get a look at the cylinder, right? So on these steels, you're going to do this top cover. All right, it's clicking. Work it back and forth and then pull it off. Okay. Let's go ahead and remove the air horn. That was not super tight. Let's suppose it was tight enough. Man, that's actually a nice piece. That's cast too. I don't see machine marks. That's all casting. Up in their game. No wonder this thing costs what it does. Some moisture there, so it's probably been ran at the factory. Again, big old honking carb. Right, we've got our impulse up here, our fuel line down here. This has the compensator, which is Steel Tech for accounting for steel people not cleaning their air filters and letting them get plugged up. Let's go ahead and take the top cover off. I am going to remove the spark plug first. I'm going to try to remove the start. There we go. What do we got? Is it a Farmer Tech plug? That is a blue label NGK-R. It even says Japan on it. BPM R7A. Yeah, it's got some runtime on it. And I would have guessed this, having worked on 3120s. It's rich. Probably because of real low RPM. You can see it's dark. It's not as dark as the camera's making it out to be, but it's definitely not that toasty golden color. Okay, so top cover. All right, that sucker was definitely to spec. All right. Chain brake forward. Top cover removed. Quick sip. Okay. Let's go to the muffler next. They put an appropriate size spring in there for the chain brake. This is something that isn't, or that is different than on the 660s and 460s. Studs and bolts on the lower mounts, which I actually like. I think that's a good move on their part. Bolts and washers. No gasket, and it's leaking, as is evidenced by the soot on the case. And see all this brown down here, up here. Yeah, not a big deal. That's not the end of the world. Okay, quick glance in here. Let me grab a light. So, fair qualifying statement, this is the first time I've actually seen an 8.8 of any flavor, be it OEM or clone, 088, 880, 881, 084, whatever, in person. So, what I'm seeing in here, let me bring you down so you can see it. There's smaller rings on top of the top piston ring. It's very interesting to me. I'm not sure why that's there. But you do want to check out the piston. You want to make sure the rings are there. There's no scoring. If we pull this over, you can see the back of the bore. It's rare you see scoring on that side. You want to look for scoring or marks. Nothing really out of the ordinary. Everything looks great on the piston side over here. Okay. Let's get you back up here. Oh, come back down here. There you go. Okay, so there's that. Now, here's the other thing I like to do if I'm actually bothering to do a full teardown, is I'll actually do a pressure vac test. There we go. The reason I do that is because crank seals are an issue. Not that I've ever seen leaking crank seals on a new saw, But if you've got a loose base gasket or a torn base gasket, if you've got a inappropriately installed intake boot and you don't want to go through the hassle of fully tearing this off, you can do a quick vacuum check. So pop the carb loose, grab my handy dandy kit. Actually, let's grab, I think this is the appropriate one for the size. I just take this flat rubber stock I have and put it in behind the carb. You want to make sure you're getting the full width between the bolts. All right. And then you don't have to reassemble the whole thing. You can just put this insert back on and then a nut or two. And this doesn't have to be He-Man tight, just enough to get it to seal up, about the same torque you would put on it if you were installing it yourself. We do have an impulse hose up here that has some kind of goofy looking ring on it. It's another one of those 8/8 things, I suppose. Okay. Actually, we will check our pulse through there, which means we will shove our spark plug back into place. All right, now we got to block off the exhaust side. This doesn't have a heat deflector. Those were, in fact, both very good and tight. So let's go ahead and zip it all the way off, because I have a curiosity. Yep, just throw our gasket on the floor. That's fine. Don't bury a gasket on the floor. Do better. Excellent. I made a custom rubber boot for 288 flange, and apparently it's pretty dang close. Close enough anyway. All right. By the way, it's a good habit to just be extra cautious when you're using impacts on small engines. It's really easy to overdo it and ruin these little M4 and M5 fasteners. But you do you, boo-boo. Okay, so we now need our Mighty Vac. We need to adapt it to that impulse hose, so we go back to our little it's already on there. Okay. Straight into the impulse. All right. So I know when I was in Husky and Steel School, tech training, crap like that, the general rule of thumb for a working saw was go up to 10 psi and 10 inches of mercury and vacuum, and you want to see no less than one increment, 1 psi, 1 inch of mercury. Some say every 10 seconds, some specify a longer period of time. Ultimately, you want no leakage in either direction. So, we take our little gauge here, we get to pumping. And we are getting nowhere. I mean, just right off the bat, getting nothing. Okay. I have a suspicion that our issue lies here on the intake side flange. So let's do this. Yep. So I can actually see the imprint here. Just missing that corner. Let's go with a wider piece. Where did I dropped it? Okay, let's try that again. All right, it's climbing. And I can hear leakage. Okay. Grab your handy bottle of soapy water. Generally, as a rule, I check the areas that I have blocked off first. Let's go ahead and remove that little boot. Oh, okay. I see some bubbles. I haven't even sprayed that area yet. All right. Let's get you in here so you can actually see the bubbles working out a good bit from around the impulse and intake boot area. So that necessitates us taking the cylinder off and finding out whether it's a misaligned boot or whether it's a poorly tightened cylinder bolt. Let's have a look here and see. Okay, that one had good torque on it, as did that one. So did that one. Whew. Okay. So we have to actually remove the carb completely. I know this is turning into a long video. Thanks a lot, China. That wasn't rude at all. tell what kind of mix they're using. It smells like kerosene. They don't run these on kerosene at the factory, do they? Do they? Okay. There we go. Yep, just drop that. You don't need it. It is odd that they put a, it's just a metal ring to hold that impulse hose on. Take the support ring out. Don't forget to put it back in when you're doing this. Okay. We undo lay muffler. All right. I see bubbles down there on that base gasket too. Well, in any case, all right, let's get it up. She said that. Okay. All right, consider yourself persuaded, sir. Okay, there's definitely rings on top of the rings. I look forward to somebody explaining that one to me. Let's go ahead and remove the hardware here before I lose it. Oh boy. Okay. Well, the band looks really good. In fact, you can even see a wash pattern on the band in the chamber. It's very interesting. I can tell you just by looking at it, the transfer numbers are probably stupid low. There is certainly a generous share of flash casting everywhere except the exhaust port. Let me get you in here. So, I bet you'd like a light to see. The exhaust port does not look bad. That's okay. If I put a light in here, sorry about that. You can definitely see there's some flash casting rather generously in the intake. If I do it this way, can you see it better? The lowers likewise, well, the entire transfers. So we definitely have a leaker. Let me take this impulse hose off. on these molded lines like this, I like to put some tension from the back side in the direction I want it to go. And then I will take a flathead from the opposite side if I can and push down to get the lip to go through. And it's working, just slowly. All right. So let me get a good look here at this with you. So unlike conventional steel impulse hoses where you have this rib section and a little molded bit, and then just a little snout for the carb nipple to push into, you've got a whole length of line. And to be honest, I don't see the advantage here of this as opposed to just using Echo 3x6 or 3x7. However, I am not convinced that this line is any good. So, let's do a little check here. All right, it holds pressure. Holds vacuum. So the leak was either where this was joined to the nipple in the case. I suppose it could be in that case seam there. This is a nice looking gasket, but it's going to get, oh, it's got a metallic layer in the middle of it. Can you hear that? Probably not. That'll get RTV'd back into place just because I'm not convinced it's not leaking. And the boot, the clamp is tight. Let's do a visual inspection here and get our peepers on it. This is turning into a long video. And I can already tell you that this video isn't going to finish with it showing you a positive leak down test or a pressure vac test result, because it's going to get ground on. I'll just go ahead and tell you. I at minimum cleaning up this casting. Probably set squish. So when you're inspecting your boots, obviously tension of the clamp is a big deal. You want to look down, you want to pull the ribs apart, see if there are any obvious signs of a tear. You want to look on the inside. It takes a very small crack to create a leak. And I'm not seeing any overly obvious signs, which on one hand is concerning because it could mean that the case seam back here is the source of the leak. It could mean that this boot maybe had a bad gap in it. Let's check. I don't see any rough casting issues that might be the result of a leak. This does have that weird leak down hole. I saw that on the 366 too. This area is machined out and recessed, and this hole feeds in through, you can see it there actually. The best guess I have seen, I've been told two different reasons why that's there. One is some European models, and this was on the 366, which is the clone of the 361. Yeah. Some weird European models impulsed through that hole. The other thing that I've seen is possibly a drain back. So if you're getting a lot of poorly flowing intake charge, then it will gather in that recess and I'm not going to edit that out. And it'll drain back into the crankcase. Both seem just as likely to me, in my medium opinion. So, this is a great way to do a first look over if you want to go this deep. I highly recommend doing pressure vac testing on saws. It's the great way to figure out if there's an issue and how to immediately rectify it. I'm going to do some cleanup work on these ports and set squish, and then I will likely go back through and check leak down again after making some other modifications. I don't know that I'm going to stay with this. If I do, there's going to be a little bit of sealer that goes on to the nipple. It's possible the nipple itself is what is leaking. There's a lot of possibilities in this area of the cylinder as to where the bubbles were coming from. All the cylinder bolts were tight. I'm not seeing any egregious casting or machining errors here or the case. So, in any case, this is what an 880 looks like when you get one and you pull it out of the box and you immediately go about tearing it down. You get sprayed in some kerosene smelling fuel and you find a leaking something. So check back for part 2 on what I wind up doing with this thing.